What if your next flight to Europe ended before it even began? Because you didn't know about brand new border rules. Starting October 12th, 2025, new border checks will take effect. Show up without knowing the rules, and you could be stuck in lines for hours, hit with surprise costs, or even worse, denied boarding before you ever leave the US. That familiar passport stamp? It's being replaced with fingerprints and face scans. Your trip into Europe is about to feel very different. And here's the kicker. By 2026, new permits and extra fees will pile on top. One little form might cost just 20 euros, but forgetting it could mean hundreds in last-minute rebooking. I'll show you how to avoid that headache later in this video. Stick with me because we're breaking down every major change. Europe's new entry-exit system, the UK's ETA, carry-on and liquid rules, even new tourist taxes, so you can travel without nasty surprises. Let's start with the biggest shift of all, Europe's new entry-exit system. Let's start with the first change that could completely reshape how you travel in Europe, the entry-exit system, or EES. Beginning October 12th, 2025, the simple passport stamp is gone. In its place, fingerprint scans and facial recognition, logged into a central EU database every time you enter or leave the Schengen zone. For American, Canadian, British, and other non-EU travelers, this means your days in Europe are tracked with absolute precision. The old 6 months, give or take, guesswork? Finished. Overstay by even a single day, and the system flags you immediately. Now here's where it gets tricky. Based on early trials and similar biometric systems in the US and Asia, travelers should expect some bumps in the rollout. Machines can freeze, kiosks may stall, and older passengers often find fingerprint scanners hard to use. If your hands are dry or your prints are faint, the reader might reject you again and again. That's not just frustrating. It's the kind of delay that can make you miss a connection. So how do you prepare? First, if your trip falls soon after October 12th, arrive at the airport earlier than you normally would, especially at busy hubs like Schiphol, Charles de Gaulle, or Frankfurt. If you're coming in from the UK through Dover, Eurotunnel, or Eurostar, keep in mind, your EES registration happens before you even leave Britain, so plan your timing carefully. One practical tip from experienced travelers, moisturize or warm your hands before the scan. It sounds small, but it helps the machine pick up fingerprints faster. And whenever possible, look for self-service biometric kiosks. They often move quicker than the staffed lines. Finally, remember the rule. 90 days in any 180-day period. Not 6 months, not roughly half a year. The system counts every single day. And here's the trap. If you don't have proof that you exited, the system may assume you overstayed. Always keep your boarding pass, train ticket, or ferry receipt as backup. Because in the new digital border, if the system doesn't see you leave, your next entry could get messy. Just when you thought the border checks were complicated enough, there's another layer coming. By late 2026, it won't be enough to simply show up at the airport with your passport. You'll also need a digital travel permit called ETIAS. Think of it as Europe's version of the US ETA, an online pre-clearance form that tells the EU who you are before you ever step on the plane. The difference? This isn't optional. If you're an American, Canadian, Brit, or one of about 60 visa-free nationalities, you'll have to apply. Skip it, and your airline won't even let you board. The good news is that once you're approved, your ETS lasts 3 years and covers multiple trips, as long as you respect the 90 days in 180 rule. The bad news? It's one more cost. When ETS was first proposed, it was supposed to be €7. Now officials are signaling it will be €20 for most travelers between ages 18 and 70. Still cheaper than a visa? Sure, but it adds up fast for families. The key point is this. The system isn't live yet, but once it launches, early glitches are almost guaranteed. That's why you don't want to leave this until the last minute. Apply weeks before your trip, not days. And don't panic. This isn't a visa interview. It's an online form with basic personal details, your passport number, and your first stop in Europe. For anyone with an EU passport or a valid residency card, ETIAS won't apply. You're clear. But for everyone else, by 2026, this little permit will decide whether your trip begins with wheels up or ends right at the gate. And while Europe is adding its own permit, the UK has already rolled out theirs. Coming up next, I'll show you why flying into London now requires an extra step, and the one mistake that could get you turned back at Heathrow. Did you know that starting April 2025, even European Union citizens will need permission to enter the UK? That's right. The days of simply flashing a passport at Heathrow are over. The UK has launched its own system called ETA, Electronic Travel Authorization. It already applies to Americans, Canadians, and Australians, and soon it will cover most European travelers too. The rule is simple. If your passport isn't British or Irish, you'll need an ETA. Unlike the EU's ETIAS, which is still delayed until 2026, the UK's ETA is live right now. It's tied directly to your passport and checked automatically by the airline before you board. When it launched, the fee was £10, but as of April 2025, it's gone up to £16. The permit lasts for 2 years, allows multiple entries, and each stay can be up to 6 months. On paper, it sounds painless, but only if you apply in time. Most approvals come through within 24 hours, but some take up to 3 business days. Leave it to the last minute, and you risk missing your flight. One small tip travelers swear by: when using the mobile app to scan your passport's chip, take off your phone case. It sounds silly, but the NFC reader often fails if the case is on. And here's why this matters. Unlike a visa, you can't talk your way around an ETA. If it's missing, the airline won't even print your boarding pass. So yes, the UK's ETA is quick and digital, but it's also another fee on top of your trip and another box you can't afford to forget to tick. Clear that hurdle, and you're finally set to fly, at least until you reach the boarding gate. Because that's where your little carry-on can suddenly turn into a very expensive problem. That little roller bag you love? In 2025, it's a battlefield. The European Parliament voted to make one small cabin bag free across all airlines. Yes, even Ryanair and Wizz Air. Sounds great, right? Up to 7 kilos, within 100 centimeters total, plus a personal item. No more surprise fees at checkout. The catch? It's still just a proposal. Until the Council and member states sign off, airlines aren't legally bound to follow it. And that's where reality bites. While Brussels debates, airlines are doubling down at the gate. A friend told me he now carries a tape measure in his backpack because Ryanair and even US carriers like Frontier will run your bag through a fit test frame. If it fails, you're hit with a fee that's often pricier than the ticket itself. He swears he's done flying those carriers altogether, unless it's with a bag small enough to fit under the seat. So what's the move? Always double-check your airline's rules before you fly. If you want to be bulletproof, bring a tape measure and know your bag's exact size. And if you're tempted to squish your suitcase into the frame at the gate, remember, some airlines literally reward staff for catching oversized bags. Have you ever been hit with one of those last-minute carry-on fees? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to see how creative airlines have gotten with squeezing money out of travelers. But the surprises don't stop at the gate. Because one airline is about to take away something even more basic: your paper boarding pass. Starting 12th of November 2025, Ryanair will ditch paper boarding passes completely. No more printouts at home, no more picking up a slip at the counter. To get on board, you'll need the airline's app and a working smartphone. For some travelers, this shift feels like progress, but for many others, it's a real worry. Especially for older passengers who may struggle with technology, relying on an app can make boarding lines longer and more stressful instead of faster. One frequent flyer even said they've stopped booking Ryanair altogether because they don't bring a smartphone when traveling abroad and refuse to be forced into using one. Imagine your phone dies right at the boarding gate. Instant stress, right? That's why preparation matters. So if you're flying Ryanair after November 12th, plan ahead. Download the app, keep a portable charger handy. And if you're not comfortable with digital passes, ask at check-in whether the airport can reprint one for you if something goes wrong. The airline says they'll do this if you've already checked in online, but it's better not to rely on last-minute fixes. And if you think boarding passes are the only thing going digital, wait until you see Europe's new liquids rule. Yes, some airports will let you bring bottles up to 2 liters through security, but there's a catch that could ruin your packing strategy. For nearly 20 years, flyers lived by one rule: 100 milliliters per bottle, all squeezed into a single plastic bag. Travel-size shampoo, travel-size perfume, even a half-full water bottle had to be tossed before security. You can probably still hear the TSA agent in your head yelling, "Empty your bottle." In 2025, some European airports are finally breaking that pattern. With new CT scanners in place, airports like Berlin, Rome, Amsterdam, Milan, and Edinburgh now allow passengers to carry liquids up to 2 liters in their cabin bags. No more fiddling with dozens of mini bottles. It feels like a huge win for travelers who hate repacking toiletries. But here's the catch. The rollout isn't uniform. One terminal might allow it, while the next sticks to the 100 milliliter rule. Some fast lanes even keep the old restriction just to stay consistent. And the moment your trip connects through the US, the TSA will still enforce 311, meaning that a 2-liter bottle of olive oil from Florence won't survive the connection in Atlanta. The safest approach? Check the rules for every airport on your itinerary. If even one leg of your trip runs on the old system, pack like the old limits still apply. That way you won't be standing at security, despite forced to ditch a brand new €30 cologne. Next, let's talk about something that isn't optional at all: new tourist taxes. From Venice to Athens to Madeira, those few euros a night charges can quietly snowball into hundreds by the end of your trip. It starts with a few euros, barely enough to notice. But stack those fees night after night, city after city, and suddenly your budget-friendly European getaway doesn't feel so friendly anymore. Venice led the charge in 2024, becoming the first city in the world to charge day visitors an entry fee, typically €5, but rising to €10 on peak days when the crowds flood in. City officials insist the goal isn't profit, it's crowd control. The funds go toward managing over-tourism and maintaining the fragile infrastructure that keeps the city afloat, literally. And when you think that's fair enough, Greece took it further, with something called the Climate Crisis Resilience Fee. It sounds noble, but it's added to your hotel bill every night. The amount ranges from 0.5 to €15 per night, depending on the season and the hotel's star rating. Stay in a family-run pension and it's barely noticeable. Check into a 5-star beach resort in August, though, and you might start questioning your eco-contribution. Then comes Madeira. The island paradise now charges €3 per hiking trail, plus a €2 per night stay tax. Locals argue it funds trail maintenance and protects fragile mountain ecosystems. Fair enough. But if you're the kind of traveler who likes ticking off all 30 trails, that's €90 before you've even bought your first pastel de nata. So yes, these taxes have a purpose, helping preserve the very places we love to visit. Still, it doesn't hurt to know what you're signing up for. Build these fees into your budget from the start, and at least you'll know your money's going toward keeping Europe beautiful. Not only is your credit card bill growing. And while Europe is fine-tuning how much tourists should pay, the US is quietly testing something that could save travelers time instead of money. A one-stop system that might let you skip an entire security line when connecting from Europe. Finally, some good news. Amid all the new fees, apps, and biometric scans, one change might actually make your trip faster. It's called One-Stop Security, and it officially began pilot testing in July 2025. Here's how it works. If you're flying from London Heathrow to certain US hubs like Dallas or Atlanta, you'll go through full security screening in Europe. And when you land in the US, you skip the second round of screening completely. No shoes off, no laptops out, no juggling trays while half asleep after an overnight flight. Even better, passengers on the trial say they didn't have to reclaim their checked luggage for customs. Bags were automatically transferred to their next flight. For some, that shaved nearly 2 hours off their total connection time. I actually heard from a friend who joined one of these trial flights. He said it felt like getting a free VIP upgrade. Straight off the plane, straight to the next gate. No chaos, no queues. But hold that excitement, because there's a catch. Of course, it's limited. Only a few routes and airlines are participating so far, mainly British Airways, American Airlines, and Delta, all through Heathrow. If the program runs smoothly, more airports in Europe could join in 2026. But for now, it's a lucky bonus, not a guarantee. Still, it's a rare piece of good news in a year full of new paperwork and digital headaches. And honestly, if this is the future of air travel, it's one upgrade I think we can all agree on. So what does all this add up to? Traveling to Europe in 2025 and 2026 is about to feel very different, but not impossible. The old routine of showing a passport and breezing through is giving way to fingerprints, apps, and digital forms. It might feel like more work now, but understanding these changes means you'll move through airports faster, skip fines, and avoid those last-minute panics at the gate. The truth is, travel is evolving. Some changes, like one-stop security, make life easier. Others, like ETIAS fees or digital boarding passes, might test your patience. But if you plan ahead, double-check the rules for your route, and give yourself extra time, you'll be fine. Europe's still waiting with open arms. It just wants you to fill out a few more forms first. And now I'm curious, what part of these new travel rules surprised you most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how you're preparing for your next trip. If you found this video helpful, give it a like, share it with a friend who's planning a European getaway, and subscribe for more updates, because the rules keep changing, and I'll be here to help you stay ahead of them. Safe travels, and I'll see you in the next one.